Hi, I'm Jason Cole. We're here at Cole Family Vineyards. Just here to talk about a little of the things we do here. This property is all organically certified and we do a lot of regenerative farming practices. This block is one of the first blocks planted at Cole Family Vineyards, and all of these vines I grew myself in the nursery operation we have. These are trained in a head training style, or sometimes called gobelet, where they have just a single stake and they're trained up on their own, almost like a little tree. And there's no wires, also no irrigation in this block, so they're just standing here on their own. This is also one of the older versions of our permanent cover crop that we've established. This kind of cover crop also cools down the vineyard by having transpiring plant underneath instead of just bare soil. And it's also very beautiful, which is a big part of what we're trying to do here. Right now we're in the dead of summer, and so we have this fruit ripening. It's not yet turned color, but it will soon. These Cabernet Franc vines will have purple fruit on them instead of green fruit very soon. And that change of color is called veraison. But there are also clones, which are sort of subcategories of those varieties, sort of like different genetics of those varieties. This particular clone, Diamond Mountain, is what they sometimes call the suitcase clone, which is a variety that was probably brought in a long time ago from Europe on unofficial channels. And through my work in Napa, I was able to get my hands on some of these vines and grow them up myself on the property. But on this property, we have many different clones of each variety. And that just adds some genetic biodiversity to that field, but also some diversity in the wine, and allows those wines to be more complex so that they have more different flavor components that might be coming together into the same wine. Right now we're walking through a vineyard block of Fiano grapes, and it's an unusual variety. I'm not sure if it's been planted in Oregon before. On this property we do a lot of experimenting with new varieties that haven't normally been planted in the region. We're a nursery, so we have a large number of different varieties in small quantities, but this is a block that I was convinced to plant a larger quantity for a specific buyer. And this is just one part of the maybe experimental nature of this property. We like to plant different varieties, try different agricultural methods, different cover crops, and that helps us to learn what does well on this property, but also makes it a little fun for the people who are getting to do the work. These Fiano grapes are really beautiful this year. These vines up to full strength, we'll call it, because it takes a special sourcing of some of these unusual varieties directly from national plant collections, and then we propagate those further in order to plant this many vines all at once. In these Fiano vines, we're training them or pruning them as a cane pruned vineyard, and what that means is that each year we lay down a new fruiting cane onto the fruiting wire. And what we're trying to do in this case is create an arc for some of these, and you can see that it starts down low and then arcs up. And what that allows us to do is the next year we can use one of these canes and lay it down onto that wire, and we'll remove all of the rest of the wood. And by including this arcing system, we need to make very few extra cuts. So next year we'll be able to use one of these two canes and remove this entire thing right here and not have to make any additional cuts beyond that. And that helps us to prevent woodborne fungus and some other types of disease that might be accentuated by making too many cuts on the grapevine. Here's an example a little closer up of this other pruning system where we have a permanent arm. See this permanent wood that runs all the way down the fruiting wire, and we don't cut this off. This stays year after year. This is called the cordon system. But the changes that we've made is adding more of these little spurs. You see these two little stubs that have two shoots coming out. Each one has two or one. And we stagger them back and forth so that we can have a really large amount of fruit, but with clusters that are all hanging free, not touching each other. And that's important for disease and also for quality of fruit, to get better air and light onto each cluster. So here we have another type of trellising and pruning style. These rows are a little bit wider apart, and that allows us to add these cross arms to the stakes. And what it does is it creates this two-wire system that has a little space between them. So this allows the vines to just grow up in between a little more naturally and saves us a little work of having to tuck them in. It also allows us to prune these vines in a way that opens up the middle of the canopy and allows us to hold a lot of fruit, a little bit more fruit than we normally would. Here we have a little test orchard. So we have some pears, some Asian pears, some persimmons are behind me. And these are also just experiments to see what other types of orchard crops could work on the property. So far, all of them are working well. And now we're walking into my mother's garden. She is an avid organic gardener and every year has this very luscious garden that produces more food than we can possibly eat. Just on the outside of our garden, right on the edge, you can see across the way here, is one of our rootstock plantings, and it comes right up against the garden. And this rootstock is being grown for cuttings so that we can make more grapevines. Different rootstocks can impart different characteristics on the vine. So normally we'll have our grapes, let's say our Syrah or Fiano or whatever variety on the top, and below that there'll be a different plant that's growing in the ground. And the main reason is for some insect pests that are prevalent across the world, but there's lots of other reasons why we might choose a rootstock. It might be better in wet soils or dry soils or drought or whatever it may be. And we take those cuttings and we sell them to nurseries and they make more grapevines for people.